got a wife, got a kid, got a yacht, oh yeah. I'm a part-time punk. I got a gut, got a house, got a car, oh yeah. I'm a part-time punk. Go and say whatever you say about people who live vicariously. You doubt I'd listen to you anyway, I'm busy. I go to work, go to church, have a beer, oh yeah. I'm a part-time punk. I'm in a band that only plays once a year, oh yeah. I'm a part-time punk, so go and say whatever you say about people who live vicariously. You doubt I'd listen to you anyway, I'm busy. Oh yeah, I'm a part-time punk. Hell yeah, I'm a part-time punk, so go and say whatever you say about people who live vicariously. You doubt I'd listen to you anyway, I'm busy. Right.
So when you came over today, you said nice to meet you, but we actually met like over 20 years ago.
Yes, and I want to hear these stories, although I am totally terrified.
No, it's good for you. Like you turned out to be a pretty cool guy. But like, so I was in a band a long time ago, and I think we were like 15 or 16 years old, and we were playing our very first show at Carpenters Union Hall.
Oh, wow.
And we were the first band, and you guys were the headliners. And I mean, I didn't know anything about any of the other bands playing because we were young, right?
Well, yeah.
And pre-internet. So it's not like you knew any of these bands coming in from out of town. And so we were like, I was so nervous. I think it was like the first 3 songs, I sounded like I was going to cry as I was singing because I get like that. Like when I get nervous, it's like that wavering voice.
Little hitch in the voice.
Yeah. Yeah, just like that. So we get through our set and I'm like on cloud 9 and we start walking our gear out, and there's this guy with this massive head of hair standing at the door. And this guy looked like he must have been like my dad's age. And
joke is, he is.
And he's like, hey man, that was an awesome set. How long have you guys been around? And I was like, oh, that was our very first show. And this guy just gave me this look like, oh my God, like really? And so that just sent me up to cloud 10, if there's even a cloud 10.
Wow.
And I had no idea who the guy was until the Bonaduces got on stage, and it was you.
That's, that makes me feel so good. Like, I mean, it may sound stupid, but one of the things I love the most is if I hear music and like, especially in a live context or whatever, if I get a chance to tell somebody, wow, that was really good. I really enjoyed that, because I know how much it means to me when, you've done something and somebody comes up to you and says, hey, that was great. Or that was, that was worthwhile.
Yeah.
There's few things better than that. So I try to always like, if I feel legitimately like that was great, I want to tell somebody.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, wow. That's cool. That's cool.
20 some years ago.
He told me you guys sucked.
I don't remember.
I was standing right beside him. He's like, this band sucks so much.
You were too cool to talk to me. Don't forget that. Don't forget that. I go to Megatunes.
Exactly Mike.
I did have T-roofs on my car. You got to be a pretty cool guy to drive a car with T-roofs.
I walked into when we played Calgary, possibly that show. I'm not sure. We played Calgary a few times. You weren't working. Okay. Yeah. We played Calgary a few times. Calgary was always really good to us. We always had really good shows here, and we had just a really nice connection with the city. And I mean, the very first time I played here, actually, we played with Red Autumn Fall, believe it or not, my old band, a band called Buick 6. And we played with Red Autumn Fall and stayed at their place, and they were super nice. And I developed a total crush on their drummer, which resulted in a song about her called The Drummer, believe it or not. Anyway, point being...
That's really clever, yeah.
Yeah, I know. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're young and foolish and you have a crush on a drummer. What are you going to do?
Write a song.
Exactly. So, but yeah, I went into Megatunes and I remember approaching a clerk, and I don't remember what it was about, but it was our friend Mike here, and
the clerk.
Just he had like the pre-hipster, 100% hipster sort of like, well, yeah, that's over there.
That sounds exactly
like just sort of like, yeah, whatever, man. I don't care, And I was just like, okay, all right.
Maybe I was so nervous because I was a big fan of your band. Did you think about that?
Well, I have no idea. Like when would that have been? Would that have been around Democracy of Sleep? Would that have been around then?
Yeah, it would have been around then.
Okay.
Or actually, the Bonaduces might have been broken. No, it would have been like towards the end of you guys.
Because it was definitely like I never played Calgary. Like I played Calgary once with Buick 6, and then we played a few times with the Bonaduces. I'm not sure how many times. And then after that, the only other gig I've done here is the one you organized where I played with my broken hands.
How'd that go?
Surprisingly well. I broke my picking hand, not my fretting hand. So surprisingly well.
So let's step back a minute.
Okay.
So 20 years old, that's when you kind of really start to get into music. Like, did you play an instrument before then, or was that sort of when you picked something up?
Well, I picked up guitar. I mean, all through childhood, whatever. You have music class, so you play recorder or whatever. But I really wasn't a music guy until junior high. It started like about 85 or so.
See, he's old enough to your dad.
It's pretty true. It's pretty true. Around 85 is when I started picking up on music and really getting into it. Before that, I'd been a car guy. Like I was one of those kids that could identify every single car on the road and what year it was made and all that kind of crap. And then adolescence hit, and for whatever reason, it became music, and I just became 100% like so into it. And so yeah, in junior high, I remember writing once how like some school project, and I was like, I want to play guitar like Jimi Hendrix and write songs like Pete Townsend and play drums like Keith Moon. Like I was like 100% like classic rock, because once again, I think I mentioned this earlier. Like there was no rock music in my house. My parents did not listen to popular music at all. They listened to like the Singing Nun and this German boy who sang songs named Heintje.
Oh yeah, we all know
who you may remember from the well-hung the well-hung carrot in the fridge. I'm saying the title wrong. The Chicks Dig It single.
The most well-hung.
Thank you for correcting me.
We're from Calgary.
I know. I should know this stuff. But yeah. So and like my eldest brother listened to like friggin' Supertramp and like Genesis after Peter Gabriel left. So,
what your parents should have been listening.
Yeah, exactly. And then my middle brother, his favorite bands, like my middle brother was one of the biggest sort of inspirations to me. Like his favorite band was the Ramones. And the funny part is I wasn't really a pop punk guy for forever, but he also picked up on Motorhead, and I heard Ace of Spades, I have this weird thing where I have this weird division. Like I either would listen to like Neil Young and The Who and like classic rock, or I'd be listening to like Slayer. I was 100% one or the other. And I remember hearing pop punk and just going, well, they can't write songs as good as the Beatles, and they can't, play as hard as like, technocracy era Corrosion of Conformity. So why should I care about this band? Like why should I care about these not good songwriters? And it took a long time. Like, I mean, I like the Sex Pistols and all that, but it took me a long time. Like I had to go through hardcore and thrash and all that first before I started going, oh yeah, actually, no, the Ramones are good. Anyway, point being, so yeah, my obsessive nature, like both of my brothers had a bit to do with it, but my obsessive nature definitely took over at a certain point. And I would take books out of the library, find out, like read about like, oh, the Byrds, the Rolling Stones, and I wouldn't really hear a lot of it on the radio. Except on Sundays, they had this show coming out of Winnipeg on one of the radio stations called Psychedelic Sunday, and they'd play all this 60s stuff. And like I said, like my parents, nobody listened to that. Like I didn't hear that anywhere. So for me, this was all brand new. So I'm hearing like, Creedence Clearwater Revival or any of that stuff, like anything, like the stuff that you think is the most generic dad rock ever, like as far as 60s classic rock goes. And it would be like this brand new thing for me. And I'd be like pumped, like, oh, I got to hear Led Zeppelin. Oh, I got to hear Neil Young. When I found out Neil Young had lived in Winnipeg for a while, I was just completely like, you're kidding me. Music that good can come from here? Right. Because I mean, I'd heard the Guess Who, but they always had this kind of jazzy edge to them. And it's like, yeah, American Woman's kind of, that's all right, But like, I mean, comparing that to like what Neil Young was doing, I'm like, there's no contest at all. And so anyway, I dug in really hard with classic rock. And then on the other side, I dug in really hard with metal. Like I had like 100 thrash metal tapes in like the mid to late 80s. I had like Slayer, Corrosion of Conformity before they went kind of grunge, DRI, The Accused, like all these bands. And I had like acres of this stuff, and I was reading about it all the time. And so all these things, weirdly enough, coupled together into the music I made. I was trying for years, sitting in my bedroom in the middle of nowhere, Bible Belt, Manitoba. I was sitting in my bedroom coming up with thrash riffs on my acoustic guitar because I was gonna form like the heaviest, craziest band ever, and we're gonna do 2 demo tapes, and then I was gonna get married and have kids and be a roofer for the rest of my life. Because that's
makes sense.
The small town dream.
That's what you do.
The small town dream. So I'm writing all these thrash riffs. I still have some of these tapes kicking around somewhere, and I wrote, but I couldn't put a song together with that stuff, and I didn't have a band, and there was nobody else interested in it. So the funny part was I would just sort of like sit around and I'd start playing, and then I write a song, like a song, like verse, chorus. And at one point I realized, you know what, writing songs like this is way easier than trying to assemble these riffs for like with nobody else to help and nobody else is interested. So I'll just concentrate on writing songs this way. And so that's really how it all developed, my writing and creating music. It was sort of this weird accident because I couldn't form the brutal thrash band that I wanted. Proto death metal or whatever.
So when do you find other people that are into thrash metal and classic rock to assemble a band with?
And unknown German.
Unknown German. Okay. It wasn't like I wasn't a fan of Heintje. I'm still not. Anyway. So I had.
But it informed a lot of your writing at the time.
Yes, a lot. No, it did not. No, I found first band I was in was a blues rock band. Quite honestly, I in high school I bumped, which is where I picked up guitar for the first time in high school. I bumped into a guy there who could play all the Stevie Ray Vaughan licks. Oh yeah, there we go. And
this sounds awesome,
doesn't it? Though
what a hero.
It's like your dream come true.
I like Stevie Ray.
Mike loves all white blues all the time is Mike's motto. So anyway, so I got into a band with this guy, and I started taking guitar lessons, and he taught me a bit as well. And this is when I was like 16 or so. And so my first band was like this blues rock cover band. And then I was telling him at the time, like, we need to write our own songs. And being that he was a blues guy, he's like, no, we'll just keep playing Stevie Ray Vaughan covers or whatever.
How much can you guys jam?
Oh man. But at a certain point, I was just like, well, I'm gonna like I said, it's this weird combination of like blues rock, thrash, classic rock, and all these weird.
Oh, that's beyond weird.
It's a bizarro combination for where I ended up at. But yeah, I started writing songs, and that's the thing. My favorite band of all time is The Who, and so that really is where my songwriting begins, trying to emulate that, and sort of the Who Neil Young axis, because Neil Young played acoustic guitar,
sure.
So it was easy to figure out how to write songs, like since I was writing songs anyway. So I got this weird thing of wanting to have sort of the power and energy and drive of The Who, and yet at the same time have this sort of, for want of a better word, proto-alt countryness of Neil Young. And then punk just sort of came in there, like I said, through the back door. Here's a kind of a funny story. So I'm going to a private Christian high school, and I'm into metal at this point, like Slayer, all that, and I'm photocopying one of my copies of this magazine known as Cream Presents Thrash Metal.
Okay.
I was photocopying on the school photocopier, and one of the seminary students comes by and he sees me photocopying this stuff, and he's like, "Oh, so you like that kind of music, huh?" And you got to remember, this is during the whole Satanic Panic thing,
right?
Like so I'm listening to music that like
people are scared of.
People are legitimate, like they are terrified of, like Satan is coming out of every orifice of your body, sacrifices any second now.
12-sided die are rolling all over the place.
Oh, you better believe it. And so like, and this is like clean cut, seminary students. He's like, oh, you're into those kind of bands? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, you should come over sometime. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Like I'm pretty young and innocent, and it's like whatever. So I go over to his place. Turns out the guy was 100% like old school, and I mean old school hardcore punk. Like he'd actually moved to Calgary at one point. He'd followed bands on tour. He had like a Germs t-shirt, like from when they were still existed. He had like vinyl records that people would give like hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for, like rare, like hardcore 12 inches and 7 inches. And he made me this mixtape. And it was just like, and so I was already into thrash metal, and this is sort of my step back into hardcore. So I'm hearing like Black Flag, Articles of Faith, TSOL, Dick Kreutzen, just all these great bands and seminal bands. And so, and once again, that sort of got it added as this extra grist to the mill, like this sort of like love for hardcore and punk in that sense of the word. And I think that's in a weird way. I remember one time, and I mean, it's a stupid discussion to have when you're young. I remember all the Bonaduces guys, I don't know where we were, what we were doing, but I just looked at Doug and said, who do you think's the most like sort of punk in our band? And he just sort of said, well, you. Because I was the one that listened to the most of that kind of stuff. Like Doug was 100%. Like when we would go on tour, Doug would be listening to these mixtapes he made of like, oh man, what's somebody's watching me.
Oh yeah,
like
Rockwell.
Oh yeah, he like a Rockwell and like all the most poppy pop from the 80s. And
that makes sense if you actually listen to your band.
Oh yeah, no, Doug is a genius pop songwriter, like 100%. Like he just has that knack, and it would just, for the longest time, it just drove me up the wall because I'm like, I gotta listen to this shit. I thought I left this behind. I don't want to hear Duran Duran, I don't want to hear Aha. But after a while, you just sort of like, yeah, this is just the way it is. This is fine. It's fine. It's totally fine. But yeah, he would play those tapes and he would be singing along at the top of his lungs. Oh man, made me crazy.
So how does that first band that you, like when you start writing originals and stop doing Stevie Ray Vaughan covers?
Well, there was a band I had where we started doing my material, and it was kind of one of those acousticy kind of things, like proto Bare Naked Ladies sort of thing.
Wow.
So we had an accordion player, of course.
Well, everyone does.
as everyone did in 1990 or 91 or whatever it was. But we had it was a really good lineup as far as musicians goes. And we call it Wilfred Naylor because, of course, that's what you're going to call your band. You're going to call your band Wilfred Naylor. Winnipeg, we don't know how to name bands. We just don't know how. And we rehearsed in his apartment. So because it's acoustic instruments, it's not going to be that bad.
No.
So I'm playing an acoustic guitar, and we got an electric bass, and the drummer's playing with multi-rods. Surprisingly, after our first rehearsal, there was noise complaints, which was shocking, as we all know. Having your band rehearse in your apartment, that's not going to cause problems. And ultimately, I started jamming with this other guy named Lucas, and that band evolved into a group called Buick Six. And one person, and we were kind of, once again, like we were kind of like 90s eclecticism run amok. Like we had a violin player, we had 3 female vocalists. I was playing an acoustic guitar through this Sears amp that from like 1962, and our drummer was basically playing like could play and did play like the drummer for No Means No, like just incredibly loud. And so we were like the ultimate nightmare for a sound man, like just complete disaster. And that was where I first started being able to really introduce my songs. And also being able to play live, like the girls in the band. Sort of the leader was this woman named Julie Penner, who went on she did some work with Do Make Say Think, and she's now married to Jason Tate of the ex Weaker Thans, and I'm not even sure who Jason all plays with these days. But she would get us gigs no problem. So we were getting gigs all over the city all the time. So I was able to bring my songs out and have this band, and we made a ridiculous CD circa about 1995, 96 that, oh man, it is literally all over the map. This bizarre mix of like folk music and a bit of punk thrown in there, and this weird song where we tried to sound like Kittens, which is a noise rock band from Winnipeg that were pretty big, big in the underground sense, I guess.
So
at
not
one point.
actual Kittens,
yeah,
but
I
the
thought
band
you were talking about Kittens for a second. I was like,
well, yes, we
that's
sounded
a very
lot
90s
like
thing.
We sounded a lot like Kittens, like just we do a lot of meowing.
Meow, 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 meow.
Oh yeah. Well, we did take that. We made this one song called Death Disco, and it featured. Do you remember vignettes, like CBC vignettes? Do you remember that one that was like dun 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 dun?
No.
You don't remember that? Oh man, I am fucking old. Anyway, we took that. If you sang it to
like
KJ,
the log
if you
driver
sang it
sort
to,
of thing?
yeah, it's like the log driver. It's like that kind of thing.
Okay.
So if you sang it to KJ, he would know it. He'd know it for sure. But we turned that into like this 8-minute like disco, like punk rock mix song, and I don't know.
You're not selling this band.
Most bizarre cover ever.
I am not selling this band. Like I am like, I have fond feelings about some of it, but a lot of it is just like, oh man.
But I mean, how does a band like that, like, I mean, looking back on it and being like, this is weird. But like, how does a band like that start booking shows and like...
See, I feel this is like, without Mike saying, I'm going to guess, I feel like this is the 90s. And that's like what bands were like in the 90s. It felt like anybody underground was just experimenting. There was just like this hodgepodge of things working together.
Totally. You could literally, like, Nirvana basically made the record labels at that time, when record labels still mattered and did something. It made them all go, sign anything that's weird, you know? And so you could do that. And I mean, we played a lot. Like, we could possibly play like 2 or 3 times a week. You know, we were playing all the time. And
like, how fast does that happen? Like, from kind of the inception of starting this band to, you know, like, it sounds like it happened quick.
It did happen very quickly. We played our first show in like April of 93, and we were just on a roll. I don't know how soon after that, but I remember writing down, like, I had to keep writing down all the dates of all the shows to make sure I could, you know, I kept them in mind, and we'd be playing constantly you're playing gigs. And, yeah, no, it was really strange. I don't know. Once again, I have too many stories to tell. I remember when I first joined the band, when we were first starting the band, cause they'd already been jamming with Matt and Lucas. I gave them a tape of my songs and, said, yeah, like, I write songs as well, you know, and I actually helped edit some of their songs. Like, I was pretty good at, like, sort of taking the essence of what was good about a song and, like, okay, you can leave all that behind. And she'd really appreciated that. So, or they'd really appreciated that. So I brought a tape of my songs, and she listened to them, and she came back and she's like, yeah, you know, I like some of the songs. That song, one song you liked a lot, but it sounds a lot like Green Day. And I'm like, who's Green Day? She's like, oh, they're this punk band. They played the Albert. You know, this is like 1992, 93. So there's this punk band. They played the Albert. They're really good. You know, we hung out with them, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so a while later, I'm at some used record store, and I see a copy of 1039 Smoothed Out Slappy Hours, and I'm like, oh, I should give this a listen, you know. And I was listening to it, and I was like, I write better songs than these guys. I'm way better than these guys. And then shortly thereafter, Dookie came out, and everything changed. Yeah, that was very bizarre.
For Winnipeg as a scene, was it like Calgary always felt incestuous, like our bands here? Like, it felt like there was such a small group of people. Mm-hmm. So if a band broke up, other people just formed a new band, or the same people were in the same band. Like, it was just like a rotating people. Like, there's only X amount of drummers. So yeah, this drummer would be in 3 bands, or like a cool band would break up, and then like 2 guys would go to a different band, and then another band, and it'd be like a new band. Like,
similar. I looked at it a bit differently. I mean, at my peak, I was in 5 bands at the same time. But that was a common thing. Like, you'd be in more than one band.
So it's like a common thing that this.
Oh yeah, indie rock, punk rock scenes. That's a very common thing. Multiple bands, and yeah, I mean, I definitely understand viewing it as incestuous. On the other hand, I always felt there was a different word I had for it, and now I can't remember what it was. But yeah, just sort of this thing of like, yeah, you're in 4 or 5 bands, but just because you want to do music so much, and everybody's like, oh, well, I write songs too. Okay, well, we'll form a band that will play your songs, you know, or we'll, you know, yeah. And that's the thing. Yeah, no, people come and go. So yeah, very similar to Calgary in that way. Very similar.
So what were some of the other bands?
After Buick 6, the first band I formed was Cheerleader, which, you know, went through a little bit of editing until it became Cheerleader. Yeah. But that was sort of my first attempt.
And you guys released the 7-inch?
Yeah, 2 7-inches. The Endearing Records was an indie label that started up around us and some other Winnipeg bands. And the very first release on Endearing was a split single with my band Cheerleader and another local band called Bell, who were sort of a C86 kind of indie pop group. Really, really good female fronted indie pop, indie rock. And then we put out a second 7-inch, and of course we broke up before that one came out.
As bands did.
And then after Cheerleader, I formed, the Bonaduces were already going. The Bonaduces were a band that we started in 95, and we broke up properly in 99. and then just have been doing reunion shows ever since. But so Bonaduces were going through this whole period from 95 to 99. Cheerleader lasted from about 94 to 96. And then at the end of the year, I formed a band called Dud, which was myself, John Samson, and James Ash, who played in I Spy. And Todd from I Spy went on to join Propaganda later on. And we recorded 5 or 6 songs that was supposed to be part of a split 7-inch where it was going to be John on one side and Dud on the other, but that never materialized. And then after Dud, I formed The Kicker, which are to a degree is still going to this day, although we haven't played a show proper in a couple of years, but every once in a while I drag the guys, come on, let's practice. And the drummer will always practice, but the bass player is kind of iffy about it these days. And then after The Kicker, who else? I was in Swallowing Shit for a little while, which is a grindcore band. But I was
only on G7.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I was just on the demo tape. I wasn't on any of the vinyl or anything. I did a solo record as Mike Koop's Multitude of Sins somewhere in there, and my latest band is called The Leftists.
So with all that,
yeah.
I mean, let's leave the Leftists out for now.
To the left.
But yeah, let's push them to the left.
Yes.
But like with all those bands, I mean, what's the one that kind of speaks the most to you, or what's the one that you feel like you were most part of? I mean, it sounds like there was a lot going on in that time in a really small amount of time, really.
It's sort of a weird thing because as a writer, you're always very much wanting your songs to be heard. And so any band where I was the primary writer, like that feels like quotation marks, my band. So Cheerleader, The Kicker, and The Leftists, and Dud to a degree, those are sort of my bands. And I have varying degrees of happiness or unhappiness with various lineups and this and that. Like Cheerleader, I always felt should have recorded a CD. That would have been the best possible time for me to do a full album, and we never did, and I always regret that. Dud, the recordings we did they need to be remixed and remastered. So if anybody out there is interested in grabbing some ADATs and doing some remixing and remastering, let us know. The Kicker has kept going on forever, and we put out a few things, but none of the recordings are quite as good as I could have hoped. And so, now with the Leftists, I'm probably happiest as far as the album we've recorded. Like I feel like it's those songs came out really, really well. There's only one song where I kind of wince at certain points. The rest of the time, I'm like, yeah, no, this holds up pretty good. Where some of those other ones, it's a little bit more. There's a little bit more like.
And all this time you're in the Bonaduces as well, right?
Yeah. Well, from 95 to 99. Yeah.
Which is like, and you guys were on that cusp kind of, right? Of like,
well,
not making it, but like you were like making that step out of just being a Western Canadian.
Yes. Like out of your own city.
Yes. And that's the thing. That's like you guys, I'm saying this nicely and I thank you very, very much for this. You would not be talking to me if it wasn't for the Bonaduces. If I had just done my own stuff, I don't even know if anyone would have ever really heard me. But with the Bonaduces, yeah, it was a weird. The Bonaduces are extremely special to me, because of the fact that we were on the cusp of something more. We had no business sense though. We had no sense of any of that. And that's part of the reason why we just ultimately failed, because we had no sense of, we were laughing at everything. We were like, oh man, I hope we get invited out to a meal from a record company guy just so we can be total idiots. Doug was planning like, yeah, if we ever went on a big tour, the tour would be us lip syncing to Heart's Bad Animals album, everything was just like ridiculous and a joke. I mean, the music itself was serious and it meant everything. And we were trying to make those songs sound as best we could. And we were trying to put on a show that people would be like, wow, I saw,
As an outsider, I will say, like, if I mention your name, people know you from your jumps in the Bonaduces. Like, people are automatically like, oh, the guy with the hair that could jump really high.
Oh man, that it might sound so stupid, but that warms my heart so much. That warms my heart so much. Remember, in junior high, I said I wanted to write like Pete Townsend and be like Pete Townsend, and he was like, I wanted to do that. I saw like I watched that movie, The Kids Are All Right, that pseudo documentary about The Who. I watched that like 100 times. And I wanted to jump like him. When I went out, I wanted to fucking go so hard. And the problem is when you're the singer singing the songs, you can't do that. And so the Bonaduces for me were kind of an ultimate, because it's like I had a writer whose material I respected so much. Like Doug is an incredible writer. Mm-hmm. I mean, when John Samson says, like, he would tell us how much he loved our record, and he would say how great a writer was.
I did read an interview with him, and he said without the Bonaduces, there's no Weaker Thans. There was like nothing. He said he admired you guys. I can't remember the quote, but it's a pretty good quote saying about how important you guys were to his music and to Winnipeg.
And to me, that is so flattering and so amazing to me. Like, just really. But Doug is an astounding writer, great writer, and he's this is gonna just sound pretentious or ridiculous. We really did have everything. We had all the ingredients. We really did have all the ingredients, except for business acumen.
Yeah, that's part of being a punk.
You know, Doug had the songs. He had the look. He had the voice. Like, he was just ideal as a front person and as an artist. He had, you know, me going off, like putting on a good show, you know. Yeah. And we had Bob and Chris just contributing this sort of like solid yet, I don't know how to say it. Like it was, and the fact that Doug and Bob had been friends since they were like elementary school, since like kindergarten or whatever, like their long standing friendship, and they played in bands together for forever as well. And their sense of humor, it just made this extra element of like fun and you know, like it was always so enjoyable. And we'd all, like, as soon as we started playing, we'd all go so hard, you know. We'd all be so into it. So there's a really magical thing for me about the Bonaduces, looking at it from the outside, like where I can look at it and go, wow, like that was something really special. And I'm so like proud to have been a part of it. Now, at the same time, it's not like we were really, I mean, I don't even know what to compare us to. Like we never got really anywhere. We got like barely known in Western Canada.
See, but I feel like when you get out of your city, like that's a big extension, you know, beyond just kind of being in the city that you're from or just being known there.
You guys were on Much Music.
Yeah.
And you weren't there. I looked it up the other day. I'm like, why isn't Mike in this interview?
I was at a family gathering. I was at a family gathering, so I had to miss it. I had to go to the family gathering. And we at that point, the band was so early in its career, we said things like, oh yeah, if someone can't make it, we'll just play as a trio. Like there's a few Bonaduces shows where I'm the drummer.
That is something that's like so relatable, just seeing shows and remember being things like, I know we have studio time. We'll just record it. I know that guy can't make it. Somebody else can fill in.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, it was ridiculous. It was like, I remember Blair from Endearing. He didn't like, I don't know if he didn't like the Bonaduces or he didn't think much about the Bonaduces at first, but he said one of his favorite shows of ours for the longest time was when I was playing drums. And I'm like, I am not even a good drummer. I mean. So
that dream was never realized from little Mike.
No, it was not. It was, I like playing drums, but I'm not good at them.
Yeah.
I'm not good at them. It's a lot of fun, but yeah.
So why not, like, I mean, you know, 99 is when the Bonaduces officially break up, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of years have gone by now. Why not ever revisit any of that? I mean, I know you said that you guys play reunion shows.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, why not revisit that band in any capacity?
Okay, there's a couple of factors. First off, the way the band broke up, it was pretty sad and pretty ugly at that point, because Doug wanted to keep going with the name. But he was more or less telling me, we have to get rid of Chris and Bob because they can't commit. Because Chris had just gotten a new job, and it was a very good job. And Bob was getting married, and Doug just sort of fell. And we had two guys who were temporarily filling in. Like we did some touring where Bob couldn't make it or Chris couldn't make it, so we'd have temporary members filling in. And these guys wanted to be the band. They were like, you know, we've been on tour now, we should be the band. And so Doug was in this really awkward place where he's like, well, I don't want to ruffle the feathers of these people that have actually been here with me, but I don't want to totally destroy my friendships. But ultimately, it just came down to, like, he was telling me this, and I'm sort of like, okay, well, we'll see what happens. And we had a band meeting. And band meetings never go well. And it didn't turn into like an ugly fight at the time, but it sort of became this thing where Bob, who'd been friends with Doug for forever, sort of felt like Doug was basically, shitting on him, like, after all these years, and he was just livid about it. And Chris was like, well, I can still be in the band. Like, I can dedicate time to this. I really can. But the rhythm section that Doug had been working with, they were sort of like, no, it's us, or like, it's us. You're nobody, like, it's you and Mike and us, and that's it. Or at least that was how it was presented to us, or how it seemed. And so, so we played a few shows as the Bonaduces, like Doug and I and these other two guys. And at one of those shows, Bob came up to me and he said, yeah, we want you to stop using the name, and we will take you to court if
wow.
Like, so I said, and I'd been keeping all channels open with everybody because I wasn't super pumped about this. And so I just sort of said, you know what, then we're going to, like I said, if that's the case, I'm out. Like, I'm not going to be part of something where it's going to devolve into this. And so we were playing a show at one of the bigger venues in the city, the West End in Winnipeg, the West End Cultural Center. And Chris asked if he could be on the guest list. And I knew that this was sort of what was going to happen. And so I said, yeah. And so after that show, we were downstairs, and Chris just said, yeah, Bob and I want you to stop using the name. And I said, I would love to keep playing with you, Doug, but I'm not sure if I was married already. No, I wasn't married, but I was dating. And I just sort of knew that my life was going to be changing. And so I said to him, look, I'd love to still play with you, but at the same rate, I don't know how much touring or whatever I can do. And so, you got to do what you got to do. And so Doug said, okay. And so at that point, he pulled the plug on the Bonaduces, and he immediately started the Paperbacks with the two guys who'd been the rhythm section that had been touring with us, Jack Yonason and Jarrett McNabb. And he got another guy, his name is escaping, Mike McKenzie, to play lead guitar.
Well, his name's Mike too?
Yeah, another Mike. And the guy who ultimately replaced Mike was also a Mike, funnily enough. And then they got somebody else finally not named Mike. I gave him the side eye. No,
Bob, Doug, Mike, Chris.
Yeah, we're pretty.
These are all
pretty
names
Canadian.
that are going to be forgotten.
We should have had a gourd. We should have had a gourd in the band. No, the thing was, when Doug started the Paperbacks, I thought that this was going to be like, okay, now is Doug's time, because the Weaker Thans had taken off and they were happening. And I was like, yeah, now Doug's going to put together his Weaker Thans, and they're going to blow up. And they started dealing with a label out of England, and they were playing like big local shows, and they were touring like nobody's business, like just touring. And then it never happened. It just never happened. And it still kind of bums me out to this day, because, and there's a part of me that thinks maybe we should have let him keep the name, because he could have evolved the sound. And he would have had this groundwork with the name and he would have been maybe able to blow up bigger. But it could also be just, once again, bad business.
What was it about the name? Like, other than, like, I mean, was it just the fact that, people recognize the name?
Exactly.
It was just like
building
a Twitter account in today's day and age.
Exactly. It's like, because of if he'd kept the name the Bonaduces, there would have been always this ongoing recognition factor. Yeah, the band would have changed and people would have gone like, oh, it's not quite the same guys, as last time, but the music's still the same, or the music's still as good, or whatever. I mean, yeah, the Paperbacks definitely sort of
like, they were pretty hyped. I know, like, because that's when I was working at the record store quite a bit, and everyone loved the Paperbacks.
Oh, I mean, they're a great band,
and they're great, yeah. And you're actually on one of their releases.
Yes, I'm on the third and final album, which it bums. Once again, I'm just sad that they never got the recognition they deserve. That third album is like a masterpiece. It's like this huge sprawling. Like, it's double CD. I think it'd be like 4.
I figured that was Doug's like swan song.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, he put everything into that thing, and Jarrett put everything into it, like recording it and producing it. It's a great album. And I remember reading one review of it where the person just took a big shit all over it. And I'm like, I was just like, I can't believe this. This album is a masterpiece. It's a great record. And it just, it still bothers me that it just never.
Yeah, unfortunately that's a common story in local scenes. Just like, why didn't that band ever make it?
I know.
They should have made it. More people should have liked them.
Speaking of things that bother you, do you ever? I mean, you mentioned some more well-known names, in John Samson and Todd, and I mean, you were in bands with those guys. Do you ever look back on that and go, oh man, the bands that they went into shortly after being in bands with you.
Yeah.
There's a common denominator here.
Well, you got to remember though, the first thing, Samson was already he
had done propaganda.
Yeah, he was already a star.
Sure,
really, he really was. And so I was lucky that he was willing to play.
And was he considered that in the Winnipeg scene? Like people kind of, there was a reverence.
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
I always wonder about that. When you're existing in that scene, it's not always that they don't have the same kind of caliber as they might in another city. You know what I mean?
No, that's the thing. Samson we all knew that he was something special and he was something spectacular. And the Weaker Thans just proved that. When that album came out, just everybody knew right away, this is something special. This is something, and it did take off almost immediately. They just, it just, but I never, for me, it was always a matter of, I got to play with these people because I was lucky enough that I got to play with them. It wasn't so much that I was some sort of,
you missed that train or anything that.
When I formed Dud with Samson, I wanted him to bring his songs too. I wanted it, and this is going to sound pretentious or ridiculous, I wanted it to be a Beatles or Big Star kind of thing. Like one of us, sort of like Lennon McCartney kind of thing, like two writers.
And who are you in that mix?
I'm really George Harrison when you get right down to it.
I'm neither of them.
I'm at best. By the way,
George is my favorite Beatle.
I'm a big George Harrison fan. He's actually technically the only Beatle I have any solo albums by. To be honest,
but you're not Ringo. Just to clarify,
I do like Ringo, but I feel
you're kind of goofy like Ringo.
I'm kind of goofy like Ringo. Anyway,
and you're
point
not
being,
a great drummer like Ringo.
Ringo is a fucking great drummer. Anyway, point
I'm
being,
just spouting facts that are out there on the internet.
But legitimately, I really did want Dud to become. I would have loved for that band to evolve into me and, or even a Husker Du kind of thing, like Bob Mould, Grant Hart kind of thing, like two writers, doing the best writing they can. And I'm not saying oh yeah, I'm as good as John Samson. Oh yeah. But it's just more like, I feel that we could have accented each other very well. I think it could have been kind of a cool band, and it could have, it could have been a unique and cool thing.
So ultimately, does that not happen because the Weaker Thans take off?
James was going to Brazil, and I had an opportunity to reunite Cheerleader. And Cheerleader, Mike Koop, who I had also been in Buick 6 with, and who I had mentioned earlier, who's this guy who could play anything at all at any time. Working with him again, and working with the bass player, this guy named Chris Peters, just astounding bass player, really, really good. He ultimately started the band The Pets, that evolved into The Waking Eyes, that evolved into Royal Canoe, which some of your listeners might know about. They're indie rock bands that have done actually, well, The Waking Eyes, not so much.
Most people know Waking Eyes. Yeah, they're a pretty big Canadian band.
Exactly.
In that world.
And Royal Canoe, I know they've done very, very well for themselves. Chris hasn't been involved since The Pets. I don't think he was in The Waking Eyes at all. But Chris is a real talent. So I had an opportunity to work with these two guys and an absolutely excellent drummer who unfortunately no longer plays at all, if I remember correctly. And so I was sort of like, well, my drummer's leaving. John had already started the Weaker Thans, he was already jamming a bit. So I just sort of thought, I'll just go back to Cheerleader. John will be doing his thing. Whatever, it's fine. And then, the Weaker Thans took off. And I was never like, oh man, I missed my chance. It never felt like that, because it really felt like John wanted his own thing.
Well, it just sounded like it kind of dissolved, like you both just kind of stepped away from it at the same time and found new things to do.
Oh yeah, and there's no acrimony or anything about that. Sorry, go ahead.
That was one of my questions. Is I get the impression that this era of Winnipeg bands are all kind of friends.
Oh.
Like you guys just stayed friends despite this like bands breaking up and stuff. For the most part, it seems like everyone just sort of was like supportive of each other.
Yeah. No, that,
Is
like I
this
said,
indicative of like the Winnipeg scene like at that time, or is this just like your little tight group?
I think that's, in my mind, that's a fairly typical thing in indie rock and punk rock scenes throughout history. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm looking at it with stars in my eyes or being naive. But I often feel like you play in bands with people and yeah, you develop these relationships and those relationships don't necessarily dissolve. Like the band might end. And I mean, it also depends on where you're at in the band. Like, yeah, if we'd signed some sort of horrible deal and we're all like, got completely fucked over, things just went to hell. Yeah, that could change things a lot. But there is this other thing where, like, I mean, the Bonaduces, like I said, ended on a bad note. But
you guys all seem to be friends still.
Yes. 2-3 years later, we did a big reunion. We did a really big reunion show. And then since then we've been playing on and off over the years, like, somebody wanted us to play. Oh, sure.
And
Sounds
most of
good.
your stuff you guys do is benefit shows now, right? Like,
yes.
is that like
not necessarily. The last show we played was just literally a show. Like they literally just said, we want you to play a show. We want you to reunite to play this show at the West End. We played with this band, the Details, who I think did pretty well, didn't they?
Yeah, they were pretty popular. They were like on CBC countdowns and things like that.
So we played a show with them at the West End, and that was literally just a show. And I mean, we'll definitely play benefit shows if people ask, and it's.
Well, for some reason, I thought like you guys just. I was going to ask if that's like part of your mantra to be like, well, we'll reunite, but we're going to give this stuff to as a benefit kind of thing.
No, we'll reunite for any reason at all.
Because even the Leftists, I know that.
I feel like there's a piece missing from here. Like, at what point does the lawsuit get dropped around the name?
Oh, there was the lawsuit never started.
No, but like, at what point does that bitterness dissolve away and you guys are allowed to use that name again? And
it took a year or two.
And then at what point, like, it just kind of blows my mind that you're this band that obviously all members still have an affection for.
Oh yeah.
And you're willing to play these reunion shows, but I mean, getting back together or writing again as a band, that's
twofold. Yeah. First off, all of us are at that point in our lives. We're all at our very least our mid-40s.
Sure.
So we're all settled in. We all have full-time careers or jobs or whatever, and and spouses and families. And so the idea of doing something more, like in the 90s, there was still that thing where you could look out and go, hey, we could be the next Nirvana. We could literally not just make a living at this, but make a good living at this. This could be really our livelihood. 2018 isn't like that at all.
But at the same time, you're all doing independent projects.
Oh yeah, we're all doing independent projects.
So you're still playing.
Oh yeah, but like stuff like touring or anything like that, that's just not possible.
Right.
And if we were to pursue it, we would have to be able to say, okay, well, we need to tour, and it's
kind of an all or nothing thing.
Yeah. And I mean, we would love to tour. We'd love to play out of town. I think we actually got invited to some sort of festival out in Ontario at one point, but it was like, you're sort of going logistically, like you'd have to pay us a lot to do this. And I don't mean that in some sort of greedy sense. I mean in the sense of like, we're all losing wages that we need to pay our bills, to pay our mortgages, to like buy food. Like, it's not like, there was one Bonaduces tour where we made money. I got like $50 at the end of that tour. That was it. So logistically, I would love to make a living as a musician, but it's just not possible and it's not realistic.
Right.
The other part of it is Doug is always writing material. And we have all said to Doug over and over again, because it is his band. Like, I mean, as far as the writing goes, it's his band. We all contribute our sound to the songs, but it's his songs. Like, and he has to, we know he has lots of material, but we're all sort of saying, yeah, if you want to, it's like that thing. You want to go? Okay. If you want to go, we're ready to go. We're all ready. We'll all go outside. We're waiting for you. You want to go? And we would drop, like, we recorded a song, oh man, is it 3 years ago now?
Armadillo? Whatever.
Yeah, Armadillo.
Which is great. I love that song.
Thank you. I think it's a great song too. I think it's a really, really good song. And I get to say that because I don't write the songs, so I can say how good they are. But yeah, we recorded that in Chris's basement, and it sounds great. Like, we could record an album so easily. But
that's just a sad fact of growing up, hey?
Yeah, it's just sort of like if Doug says yeah, then it'll happen. But at the same rate, we do an album,
but you can't tour it.
You can't really tour it, and who's really? I mean, some people will care.
Just nostalgic nerds like me.
Yeah.
So are the projects more locally focused then?
Yes and no.
That you're doing now?
Yes and no. Like I said, I would love to tour. I know I can't tour. With the Leftists, we made an album that I feel very good about, and I want to promote it as much as possible, and I want people to listen to it and buy it or download it or whatever. But at the same rate, it's like I know anything beyond that would be winning the lottery.
I would like to know, have you ever figured out who's the Mike Koop fan club?
No, I don't know who's the Mike Koop fan club.
You're the only person I know that has a Facebook fan club.
There's a Facebook fan club for me. I don't know who runs it.
How many followers are there?
Maybe
I don't know. We can look it up.
Maybe 100 at the most.
I think it's
hilarious. Pretty good. I feel like mine would have 5. So that's pretty good.
But it's like, yeah,
some second cousin that you don't know that's like, oh, you looked me up on here.
Well, this is the thing. People have tried communicating with me through this site. Like, and about stupid stuff like kids' birthdays or whatever. Like, hey, blah,
like
blah,
family
blah.
members?
Well, no, like friends,
okay.
From way back. And they're just like, hey, what are you up to? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, eventually the person who runs it, who I think only checks it like once every 6 months, maybe, like all of a sudden, like, oh, by the way, Mike's not connected to this at all. I think they've actually changed it now. So it says on there, you cannot communicate with Mike Koop through this. This is not connected to him. But yeah, it's flattering and it's kind of funny, and I would kind of like to know who runs it, but it's also kind of neat that I don't know who runs it. It's like, oh, that's cool, and nothing bad ever. Like,
what's on this fan site?
Not very much. Like,
no, not very much. I just think it's funny.
Yeah, there's a few pictures here and there. Every once in a while, they'll mention a show that I have coming up, and I have a YouTube channel that I've been putting my albums up over the years.
It sounds like it's done better than the actual Bonaduces Facebook page, which if you go to it and you look at about, it just says musicians.
Yeah,
that's it. There's no names of people in the band. There's no information like we've collected here today. It sounds like the Facebook page, you have no idea where it comes from, has more information on it.
You could very well be right. You could very well be right.
The Leftist one is informative though.
Yeah, that's because Ethan is on top of it. It's what's kind of really something that's really cool about the Leftists is both of the other guys in the band, music is actually their profession. My drummer is a drum teacher and drums in I don't even know how many bands. Like, he's a jazz drummer who plays with everybody. And he's obviously really, really, really good. So just having that guy want to and be able to play with me is very flattering. The bass player, Ethan, used to play in Burn the 8-Track, they did pretty good. He
wrote a bunch of music and stuff too. I've saw them play a lot of times here.
Unfortunately, he's not in any of the lineups that record it.
Really?
He's after all the recordings.
Burn the 8-Track came out of Guy Smiley, right?
Yep. Yeah. And so he's toured everywhere, but he is now, he's one of the onstage technicians for Counting Crows is his latest gig. And so I got like these two guys who are actually in the business and are really, it's their profession. And so they're able to be a lot more professional than I am and just sort of like, okay, like Ethan's like minding the Facebook page. I hired the guy to do the artwork for our album, but it's really Ethan who put everything together and like he's really he's the businessman that the Bonaduces never had,
So where does this sound kind of come from? Like, where's the progression of you as a songwriter as to where it fits in with the Leftists, or how does it, what kind of evolution does it take to get us to this kind of, I don't want to say conclusion, but
here's a funny thing. I mean, I still write songs, but I don't write very much. The Leftists album, 80% of that album was written in the mid 90s. 2 of those songs were written within the last 2 years. And I'm not going to say which songs are which. Like you guys can figure that out for yourself. The Leftists, to a certain degree, are the leftovers. A lot of those songs were songs that I brought to the other bands. And in the one band, in Kicker, the bass player was like, this song's too pop punk. I don't want to play it. In the Waterworks, it was like, it just wasn't getting enough oomph. We need more guts to it, more rock to it. And so these are all these songs that I always felt good about. I always liked them, but they mostly got left behind. And then once the Leftists started, I was like, I should write some songs for this band now. And so I, started writing some new material. But it's funny that you use the word evolution because literally, my writing style has remained pretty much the same since like 93, 94. And I mean, there's been little changes here and there, but basically I feel that I can bring songs from any point in my writing career and play them. And I'm not saying that, what I'm saying is I always tried to write songs that I felt would be timeless. That was my hope. Now, obviously there aren't timeless because they don't sound like, what's happening in 2018. They didn't really sound what was happening in 2008. To a certain degree, even in 1995, 96, we didn't fit in. My songs didn't fit in. They weren't pop punk enough. They weren't proper, in quotation marks, power pop, or they weren't the correct kind of indie rock. They were this weird middle ground between all those things, all these things that I love. Like I said, describing this love of thrash and blue and classic rock and playing in a blues rock band and loving Neil Young. I took all those things and mashed them together, and that's my writing style. And it's never really fit in properly anywhere. Not like it's some sort of alien thing, but it just never's properly fit in. And so I just sort of have to roll with it. It's like, well, this is what I do. I'm happy with these songs, I'm not happy with all the recordings, unfortunately, but I'm happy with these songs, so I'll just keep going. And as far as if you like songs with verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus, that have, melodies that will probably stick in your head and, generally have loud guitars, that's what I do. And hopefully, you like it. And if you don't, sorry, it's all I got.
I mean, with the music community in Winnipeg, like it sounds, and maybe this is just you, that it sounds like everyone's really supportive of one another. Nobody's really like, oh yeah, those guys, they made it, but they suck. It sounds like there's a real sense of community within that scene.
There is, like, you got to remember, I'm still part of a scene that was. There's new scenes all the time. Like, I don't know a lot of the younger bands. I don't know a lot of them. Not that I don't want to. And if I see a new band and hear them, just like when I saw your band, I will go up to them and say, hey, that's great stuff, or that's really cool, or whatever. But I feel that definitely happens because nobody gets out of Winnipeg. Nobody gets out of Winnipeg. Like, Comeback Kid only made it out of Winnipeg because they didn't stop. And I'm not, once again, this is not derogatory towards anybody's talent. Propaganda, Comeback Kid, Venetian Snares, I'm trying to think if there's anybody else.
Bonaduces.
Well,
Robin Blackbird. What was his name again?
That's a whole different kettle of fish.
I'm just kidding.
But the bands that have made it out usually are this mixture of things that don't make sense. Like, who would have thought that a super, super left-leaning ultra political skate punk band would become like the largest export? Like thinking about Propaganda, like what, wow, we're going to play skate punk, but we're going to be so incredibly anarchist, leftist, political. And it's like, yeah, that's just a recipe for success. That's totally, everybody's going to just, yeah, that's, you're going to sell a lot of records that way. There's no way. And so the thing with Winnipeg, is making it out of Winnipeg is just about impossible. Being known out of Winnipeg it's just about impossible. You're in the middle of nowhere. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Bands come from Toronto and they fucking deal with the worst shit they've ever had to deal with in their life. I remember Hot Heat told me about the first time, like they came from Vancouver, the first 2 or 3 times they came to Winnipeg. And the guy told me about how a guy stood like 1 foot from the stage and spit on them for the entire set and said, "You fucking suck." first time Elliot Brood came to Winnipeg, I opened for them. I did a solo set opening for them. There was like one person in the audience. They'd blown up in Ontario already. They were the hugest thing. And it's like they had to play their requisite, "This is Winnipeg, we will fuck you up" show. Because Winnipeg is just, it's hard. You're not going to make it. One of my favorite songs that I wrote is specifically about this. I wrote this song called "Music is Worthless." And there's a few different meanings you can take from it, but one of the biggest parts of it is literally like, it doesn't matter. You go ahead and do this, but just understand that it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Like, maybe someone will hear it, probably no one will, but you can't let that be the reason you're doing it. If the reason you're doing music is like, yeah, I'm going to be a star, or I'm going to make it, or everybody's going to love me, don't. But once you get to that feeling of like, yeah, there's a worthlessness to this. Nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to notice. I don't care. I want to do this. I want to do this because I want to do it. That's the real essence of it. I am doing this because I want to do this. And I feel it's worthwhile. But don't think you're going to make it. And don't think that your band is... I remember playing with some band and they're like, yeah, our friends can pay at the door. We're not going to have a guest list because we're going to make it. And I was just laughing. I'm like, you kids, you have no clue what you're talking about. We're in Winnipeg. This is where people go to die.
That's how I feel about Winnipeg.
Don't get me wrong.
I thought Victoria is where people go to die. I
thoroughly love being part of the Winnipeg music scene. There's so much I love about being in Winnipeg, but at the same rate, it's a harsh environment. It's a very harsh environment.
So as you know, this is a top 5 podcast as well.
Yes.
So we did ask you, not recruit you, but ask you to come up with a top 5 bands of Winnipeg.
We're kind of like a cult. We do some recruiting.
Well,
once you've been here, if you sign up,
I try not to say recruitment until the end.
If you sign up 5 people,
oh jeez,
you advance a level.
Oh, crap.
And then you can buy our textbook.
But this is not a pyramid scheme. That's not what this is.
I'm so relieved that it's not a pyramid scheme.
Yeah,
Wait, am I going to have to brand myself near my genitals? Is that?
That comes later.
I mean, we do it.
Oh man, this is.
But it's not mandatory.
That's just a fun thing we do.
Damn it!
Are you talking to yourself now, or are you talking to this mic?
No, I'm talking to that man.
Okay.
That mic. Yes, so many mics in the room.
Well, there's 3, and then there's 2 more.
Our dad jokes will never end. Oh, it's sad, but true. So yes, so I took it and I kind of shifted it around a little bit, and I just made it 5 excellent Winnipeg CDs. Excellent Winnipeg CDs.
CDs. I like how you. Emphasize CDs.
That's right, folks. I'm him, the last guy on the planet Earth that loves compact discs.
Amazing.
Oh, it is not amazing. It's terrible.
No,
but
I love it. In a world of streaming, I mean, you'll be able to listen to music when the apocalypse happens.
Well, yes and no. I'd still need a CD player that works, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, don't forget that part. There's still electricity and computers involved here. So
I feel like you could find solar panels in a pinch after the apocalypse comes.
We'll see.
But hunting for CDs is much easier than, let's say, anything else, because so many people have given up their CDs. So you can actually find stuff that you maybe could not find before. Dollar
bins have been very friendly to me as of late. Although the opposite is also true. Like things that I used to see at a decent price on, say, Amazon or whatever, because it's like, and I'll say, I'll just put that on my wish list. I'll go to it later. And then all of a sudden you look back and like now it's $80, $90 because all the $1 copies got sold.
Yeah.
And so you're less stuck with like, okay, if you really want this, you're going to be paying $90, which I will never pay for a CD.
You say that now.
Oh no, I mean, unless I win some kind of lottery.
Do you digitize them after you?
No. I listen to them. That's all I do.
Do you have a Discman?
Yes, I do.
Wow.
I have a Discman that's just barely functioning. I need to get another one. I have a Discman.
It's geriatric.
It is. I'm able to listen to music at work, which is really nice, and then in the car kind of thing. And so yeah.
Some cars don't even have CD players anymore.
Oh, I know that. Believe you me. Our car was like one of the last ones. So once again, I'm going to need to get a Discman pretty soon.
Once again.
Yeah. But I mean, the simple fact of the matter is it's kind of an age thing. It's like, yeah, this hit me at the exact right time where it's like, this is my format of choice, the format I prefer. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just sticking with it. And it's not like I have a problem. Like I'm not against streaming. I'm not against any of that stuff. It's just like I'm not part of that loop. And I just don't feel like I want to own something. I want to have something that I hold in my hand. And people go, oh, well, get vinyl. And it's like, no. I remember vinyl. I hate pops and scratches and skips and all that stuff that people romanticize. Like, oh, it sounds so real. It's like, if I went to a show and coming through the mains was like, I would not be going, oh man, it's so romantic.
I think you need to take better care of your records.
No, it didn't matter.
You can still get skips on a CD.
It's true, but then I just get a different CD.
Okay.
I literally, I do not tolerate the skip.
You're very specific.
Oh yeah, I'm horrible. I'm not gonna lie. It's not like this is some sort of romantic, nice thing that I'm into CDs. It just is what it is.
So these CDs you speak of,
yes.
Do you have 5 of them?
Yes, I've because you asked for a top 5, I made a list of 5.
Excellent.
And in no particular order, I'm going to go with...
That's the way we do it, no order.
Okay.
Yeah.
The first one's going to be the Telepathic Butterflies, their second album, which is surprisingly called Songs from a Second Wave. They were kind of maybe a little bit of mod, but not that much, kind of power pop band. Had a lot of energy. Great writing, great playing. They were on a label out of New York called Rainbow Quartz, which, if I remember correctly, a lawyer started it up because he had so much money he didn't know what to do with it. So he's like, I'm going to form a power pop label. And he put out a lot of albums by a lot of bands. And surprise, surprise, I'm pretty sure it's defunct now. But yeah, Telepathic Butterflies, they've put out 3 or 4 records for sure. Maybe as high as they may have put out, like maybe even a half dozen. But once again, great songs, great playing, power pop in the like the late 70s, early 80s kind of mod punk sense, but with a lot of Beatles in there as well. So if you're a fan of, say, like the Jam and the Beatles, this would be something you'd be digging.
Also a name that kind of backs up your point about bands not really doing well with naming their albums out of Winnipeg.
Winnipeg's got a real problem.
I can't wait to hear the next 4.
But Telepathic Butterflies actually got their name from a Kurt Vonnegut book.
Okay.
So there is a legitimacy, kind of like, okay.
Stop sticking up for Winnipeg.
There's a deep...
I'm going to stick up for Winnipeg if I want to. No. Next up, actually a band who did have a truly dreadful name. They called themselves Grand Theft Canoe.
Oh, wow.
Grand Theft Canoe. Another power pop band. This time a little bit more easygoing. Not easy listening, but not as hard driving as the Telepathic Butterflies. They recorded an album with what's his name now? He produced, I think, a few Sloan records. Brendan.
Did they go by GTC by any chance?
No,
they didn't.
Well, they did it at certain points.
Were they taking care of business?
But anyway, Grand Theft Canoe, ultimately, they recorded this album with Factor money, like Manitoba Film and Sound or Factor, or like one of those grants, and they broke up and they weren't going to put it out. And basically they were told, well, you have to put it out. And so they did. They changed their name to Voit, Voit, and I'm spelling that for a reason. This album, called The Moon Hour, if you can find it, is one of the greatest records to ever come out of Winnipeg, period.
Wow.
And I'm lumping that in with Neil Young. Like, it's that good. It's just a killer record. It sounds spectacular, absolutely unbelievably great writing and singing, just so good. So, Voit, The Moon Hour, look for it. If you find it, consider yourself a very lucky person. I don't know. It might be on the internet. Like somebody might have set up a Bandcamp or something for it, but I don't know. It's just such a great record though. Changing gears slightly, a band I mentioned earlier, Kittens, who, believe it or not, Jello...
Another great name.
It's a good name. Jello Biafra actually said some really good things about them, which is very cool.
Wow.
They're sort of an AmRep noise rock band, but I'll be brutally honest with you. I don't know of another noise rock band that I think are even close to as good as they were. They put out an album called Tiger Comet in 94. Just face ripping. Like, such a great record. Unbelievable. So aggressive, in your face, high energy. Can't say enough good stuff about it. It came out on Sonic Unyon. back in, like I said, in 94. I think I actually pissed off one of the guys from Sonic Unyon now that I think about it. I think one of them was a rep, and he came in and he was trying to sell stuff at the record store, and he said something about Blue Oyster Cult. And me being a young jerk at the time, not the old jerk that I am now, said, yeah, Blue Oyster Cult, they suck. The guy just gave me this look like, and now your career in Canadian music is over.
I kind of forgot about Sonic Unyon. Are they still around?
I doubt it. Probably not, but I mean, they certainly never helped my career because I insulted Blue Oyster Cult.
That's it.
Sorry, Sonic Unyon.
That's how a lot of people lost their careers in music. You're not the first.
It happened.
You didn't fear the Reaper.
No, I didn't. But man,
clearly.
Well, Blue Oyster Cult were one of those bands that was sold to me as though they were going to be just face melting. Like they're going to be like, it's sort of like when you see, remember how the first time you saw like the iconography for the Grateful Dead, like all those skulls and bones, and you're like, man, this band's going to be fucking Motorhead.
Scary.
It was such a disappointment.
And then you're just like, oh, this is like the Eagles, except wimpier.
The Eagles Light, I think is.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm saying this as a person who owns a half a dozen of their CDs.
What was that, sorry?
CDs. So yeah, Blue Oyster Cult was sold to me as though they were going to be like just this like MC5 stooges, like, it's going to tear you a brand new asshole. And it's like, well, it's kind of middling hard rock with sort of lots of vocal harmonies, and they sing about death, I guess. Maybe there's a lot of Blue Oyster Cult I'm missing out on, but what I've heard has not. I to this day,
you're fine.
And that's the thing. I'm like I said, I am a classic rock guy. To this day, I'm still like, just not like there's a song here or there, but. Yeah.
So your fourth choice is Blue Oyster Cult. Is that what I'm?
First off, they're not from Winnipeg. Okay.
My bad.
Anyway,
I was just going by name.
It would make sense. It would totally make sense. But yeah, Kittens, Tiger Comet, great record. The next one, Hush Feed, their EP Without Blinking. They were on a label called Permafrost, which was sort of formed in Endearing Records' stead. Like Endearing Records, it wasn't like they were like some amazing label that, it wasn't like they were SST or something like that, like some huge indie, but they got enough traction in Winnipeg that a few other people went, hey, well, why don't we give this a try too? And Permafrost was one of them. Hushfeed they were distinctly influenced by Superchunk. There's no denying that, but I felt they had great songs and, just absolutely loved them. The EP was actually a great idea just because it sort of magnified everything that was good about the band into like a good 5-6 song chunk. And super good. Like if you're into super chunk style, what I refer to as proper indie rock, when indie rock still had rock in it. I'm going to be an old man here and say I am very, very tired of bands calling themselves indie rock and they have about as much rock in them as a pair of like beige corduroy pants. It's like, oh, you're just sort of bland and kind of like weepy. Yeah, there's no real rock there. So, yeah.
It's weird that you're wearing beige corduroy pants as you say that.
But isn't it cool that I'm wearing them on my head? Like, I think it's a pretty hot look. Don't you think it's a hot look?
I don't know about cool. Maybe cool, like in air quotes. Cool.
All the guys in Winnipeg are doing it, Nate.
It's cool.
Don't stick up for Winnipeg.
No, you gotta stick up for Winnipeg. No, you don't. Winnipeg will beat your ass. Winnipeg will beat your ass in the back alley.
No one's going to get beat up there anyway, so they keep telling me to come meet them, but no one's going there.
I know, it's true. And last but not least, another band I mentioned earlier, Bell. They were indie pop, indie rock, sort of like maybe a little like the C86, but not as ramshackle as a lot of those bands, but just sweet, perfect kind of pop indie rock songs, great harmonies, just delightful. They made another album that is also really good called Bright Eyes, and I think it's called Bright Eyes. I could be wrong about that now. But anyway, and then they evolved into Paper Moon, not to be confused with the Paperbacks. And it's kind of interesting because Paper Moon featured members of the Bonaduces, and the Paperbacks was run by the major writer for the Bonaduces.
Yet you won't call it incestuous.
Maybe. Maybe I will. Hey, whose attractive looking cousin is that?
Sounds like more of a Shelleyville kind of thing.
Oh, that's not the town where you spit. Oh no, that's from Corner Gas. Never mind. One thing to know about people who are searching for stuff like this on the internet: Bell's album, which is called "Only a Paper Moon." Bell is spelled B''E', HL, often all in lowercase. I'm sorry, but it's true. I wish they would have just gone with something not quite like that. I wanted to call them Gobo Boober Red. Like, they asked me to name their band.
That's even more Winnipeg.
I know, it's from Fraggle Rock. It was from Fraggle Rock, and I kind of associated them with Fraggles because, I don't know, youthful energy or something. Yeah, it's okay. It's the worst. Let's just be honest. It was the 90s. We thought heroin was good for you. But anyway, Bell, once again, B''EHL, Bell, Only a Paper Moon. Super great indie pop, indie rock album. Check it out. All these albums so worth your while.
Thanks for doing this, Mike.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate this, like, so much.
Before we let you go, where can we find you? Because I know you're not a big social media guy. And the Mike Koop fan club is not you.
Yes. Also, if you communicate with the Leftists via the Leftists Facebook page or the Leftists Bandcamp, where you can find Demonstrate. Unfortunately, I am not in control of those either. Well, not unfortunately.
You're not the business guy.
No, I'm not the business guy. I'm sorry. So if you do want to, the closest I get to social media is Instagram. I have an Instagram account called I'm Into CDs, which is IMTOCDS. And it is literally just pictures of CDs. So prepare yourself, because that's what's happening here.
But these are CDs you own.
Yes, they are.
Yes.
So they artifacts. They're pictures of artifacts.
Exactly. Okay. Perfect.
And if people want to buy the Leftists album?
They go to the Bandcamp. The Leftists, the album's called Demonstrate. So the Leftists Demonstrate at Bandcamp. And you can pick yourself up a copy there. And if you send a note to Ethan, our bass player, and say, hey, I'd like to get a cassette copy of this. We do have cassettes for sale.
Wow. No CDs?
And if there's any labels out there that are interested in doing something like a CD or a vinyl, let us know. Let us know. We're not going to lie.
And something cool about your Bandcamp is that a large chunk is donated to something.
Yes.
So what are those causes?
One is girls rock. You know, you're really putting me on the spot
You
here.
should know the shit.
I should know the shit.
One of them was Girls Rock or something, or Girls Unite or something like that.
The thing behind it is that we sort of felt, with the band name The Leftists and the fact that the band were all pretty left-leaning guys, to say the very least, we felt that it would make more sense for us to, just kind of put our money where our mouth is. And so any money that comes in via the Bandcamp site goes to Girls Rock and another group whose name I've totally forgotten. And I feel
we'll put links up to it on our site that no one goes to.
Somebody goes to. I thought you told me this was popular, Mike. I thought you told me.
Well, Nate listens to it.
Oh, well, that's good enough. That's good enough for me.
I'm popular enough.
That's good enough for me. I'm cool with that.
All right.
But yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
No problem.
Thank you again, Mike.
Thank you guys. Thank you very, very much.
Keep on rocking in the free world.